Okay, so I think that we can begin right now. Welcome everybody to this Entrecomp Europe webinar organized by the leaders of the practice pillar 3 of the project based on assessment and digitalization. I'm Isabel Sanchez from the regional government of Extremadura in Spain, one of the partners of this project. Okay, so as I was saying at the beginning, very welcome to this peer exchange. We will present today 2 tools on assessment that are usable for entrepreneurial education. We have 2 top speakers, one Maria Isabel Sanchez from Extremadura in Spain and Hazel Israel from Bantani Education in Belgium. Just a short remember of the housekeeping rules. As I was saying at the very beginning, this webinar is being recorded. Keep your camera on if you don't mind. If you don't want to appear on the recording, please just switch off your camera. Keep your mics off during the presentations. It will be much easier. And use the chat for your comments and questions at any time. We will also put the links for the exercises or the group dynamics in the chat, and also the information of the website of the project and social media accounts. And well, let's begin the agenda for today, the introduction that I'm doing now. Then we'll jump into a short group dynamics just to experience, well, what it is about the assessment. Then we will have the first presentation from Maria Isabel Sanchez from the University of Extremadura in Spain, who will present us with the impact tool for entrepreneurship education programs we have in our region. And just after, we will have a Q&A session for her presentation. As I said, just put the questions in the chat. Then we will jump into the second presentation for today on EntreAssess, a tool for teachers, which will be made by Hazel Israel. We will have then other round of Q&A session, and we will finalize by a second group dynamics and the conclusions that will be made by Ellen McCallum, the director of Bantam Education and one of the coordinators of our project Entrepreneurial Europe. So let us talk about a little about our project. And this project, Entrepreneurial Europe, is aimed at creating communities with a shared understanding of entrepreneurship as a competence. And it is based on Entrecomp, the European entrepreneurship competence framework. And its aim is to design national strategies to test and implement actions around this model. We are 5 countries participating, 15 partners from Belgium, Italy, Moldova, Spain, Turkey, although we aim at reaching a global community around Entrecomp. Our project is based on 3 practice pillars. The first one being youth and work and education. The second one on employment and enterprise. And the third one on assessment and digitalization, which is transversal. It is financed by the COSME program of the European Union. Of course, if you are interested in joining our national collaborative communities, be very welcome. You have our website here. I think that my colleagues will also put the links in the chat. We have a Facebook account, a LinkedIn account, and also Facebook pages for each country. So be very welcome to join us and join the conversation. To enter deep in the subject about assessment and digitalization practice pillar, I would say that our challenge, as you may know, if you're experts in that field, is that assessing entrepreneurial competence is not a simple thing. And digitalizing it is also very difficult. So the idea is to recognize competencies throughout this practice period. How are we doing this? By sharing, setting up, and testing new methods and strategies to assess entrepreneurship competence in different contexts and with different target groups. And also by the digitalization of EntroComp, thanks to a suite of open pages that we are designing at the moment. These will be connected in verifiable credentials that will be presented in portable images. What are the advantages of these open badges? They make individuals learning more visible. They can easily be shared online. They award a digital certificate, and for employers, for example, it is possible to verify skills of individuals. So as you may have understood, our general objectives for this practice pillars to share assessment tools and open up the idea of recognizing entrepreneurship competence. Who are the partners involved in that task? As practice pillar leads, we are Bantani Education and also the regional government of Extremadura. There are other partners involved, Chambers, that are the coordinators of the whole project, also the Turkish National Agency, Matera Hub in Italy, and ANCD in Moldova. But let's give the floor to our speakers. As I was mentioning, we will have two main speakers. Maria Isabel Sanchez, who is lecturer and researcher in the Department of Business Management and Sociology in the School of Economics and Business Administration at the University of Extremadura in Spain. Hazel Israel, who is an expert in entrepreneurship education and in skills assessment at Bantani in Belgium. And for the conclusions and the last word, Ellen McCallum, who is the director of Bantani, expert in entrepreneurship education for the European Commission, European Training Foundation. I have to say that the three of them are very enthusiastic people about assessment, about entrepreneurship education, and this is the topic that has come here together today. So I will stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Hazel now, who will introduce us with the short group dynamics on assessment. Hazel.
There we are. I'd better unmute myself to start. Thank you. So to introduce myself, my background is teaching, working across phases, trained for little children in early years originally, but working actually with young people over 16. And then I went on to got into assessment, examining, policy, qualifications, teacher training. But I think the common thread through my experience has always been working with harder to reach students, non-academic students. And I found myself delivering entrepreneurial learning before I knew what it was. I needed to help my students to find meaning and purpose in their lives. And this takes entrepreneurial spirit and competence. So at Bantani, we're passionate about empowering learners to create opportunities and value for themselves and others. So contributing to the development of the EntreComp framework, we now use it across multiple projects to test it and explore how it adds value to activity and learning for different purposes in different contexts. And it's a very, very interesting time for me to join Bantani with my background in skills and assessment. because I've got a very clear focus on assessment. The time is great because interest in entrepreneurial education is growing fast. You know, we need to be talking about solutions, innovation, resilience, adding value, helping each other. The pandemic has really sparked a surge of interest in entrepreneurial learning approaches. So the whole purpose of entrepreneurial learning then is about adding value, not only financial value, but also social value within families and communities, and cultural values in communities. And we are very clear that we need to be able to evidence the value that has been created to make a strong case for entrepreneurial learning. So, as I mentioned, we've been using and applying EntreComp for different purposes, in different contexts, with parents, with migrants, with teachers, with cooperatives. And it's clear to us that we need to be able to evidence the impact and benefit of entrepreneurial education. So it's a slightly more refined focus than assessment when we begin to talk about evidence and evidencing impact. So there are three main concepts or ideas we want to talk to you about today. And these would be purpose, impact, and evidence. So instead of thinking about assessment in terms of tests and measurements and right and wrong answers, we're going to think about assessment through the lens of being able to evidence the impact of what we do. So by way of illustrating this idea or giving you an example, demonstrating this idea, we're going to go through this process to evidence the impact of today's session, if you like. So the purpose of today's session is our purpose is to provide an interesting and useful session for you, okay? So we're going to do a group activity on Mural, and Alex is going to share the link for us now in the chat. So what I want you to think about is, what does useful look like? We need to break useful down into success criteria. So for you, what are your ideas about what creates a useful session? What does a session need to look like? What does it need to be for it to be a useful session, okay? So I'm gonna open up the Mural and share that now, 1 second. Bear with me. And give you a minute to hop on. Okay, is everybody on? Not that I can see you if you're nodding, but if you're okay, so you'll notice that at the bottom you can see all these funny little characters. So you'll be a visiting crab or a visiting penguin or things like that. So you can contribute anonymously. But what we would ask you to do, we're going to focus on the purpose column, that first column there. And in the far left of the screen, you'll see how to add sticky notes. So please pick yourself a sticky note. Oh gosh, sorry. Pick yourself a sticky note from the left-hand side there and add your success criteria for a useful session. So we've put some, like a start, it's got to be engaging, it's got to be informative. I'll add one now to demonstrate what I mean.
Please only add post-its on the purpose side, please.
Yes, yeah.
As we will work on the other impact and evidence afterwards. A couple of minutes, I think. Great. We have.
I love Mural. I always find, you know, sometimes when you're doing a presentation or there are a lot of people in a webinar, you're not sure if you're actually communicating with people. And it's so lively to see people contribute. I find it very energizing and exciting to see you all being little penguins and goats. Adding your ideas. Brilliant. Thank you very much for engaging and contributing. Okay, good. So what we're going to do then, so this is our purpose then, to make a useful session for you today, it needs to be like those qualities or success criteria that we're recording in the purpose column. So what we're going to do then at the end of this session is revisit those success criteria and use them to evaluate how well we did. Did we meet our purpose? Was the session useful in the terms that you have decided, in the terms that you describe, okay? So that's brilliant. I think we got loads of ideas there.
Maybe we can read some. Hazel, what do you think?
Yes, certainly. So we've got a bit of a tall order today then in terms of our session. It needs to be inspiring. There needs to be learning. It needs to be not too long. That's an important point. It needs to be engaging, meeting like-minded people, networking, get information to reveal the competences, help people to assess online. It's got to be informative. Well, fingers crossed, I'm feeling quite confident so far. We'll be able to meet these criteria for you today. Right. Okay. Has everybody had a chance? Visiting sea lions, visiting rhinos. Great. There we are. That's lovely. Thank you very much for your ideas. Okay, so we'll come back to those at the end then and use them for our evaluation.
Perfect, Hazel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contributions. Now I give the floor to Isabel Sanchez from the University of Extremadura in Extremadura region in Spain, who will present the impact tool for assessing the entrepreneurship education program. Sorry.
Thank you.
For years.
So it's there. It's easy to see my screen. Yeah.
Yeah. We cannot see the full screen, but
yeah, I'm trying. I don't know why. Just a minute. Now, perfect. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to try to explain, well, a lot of work with a lot of people involved in a project that is not a project for 1 year. This is, I'm trying to present the soul of entrepreneurship culture here in my region where I'm living. I like to start just explaining that I'm not from Extremadura. And I like to say that because the way of presenting this project and the region, I think that is even more honest, considering that I'm not from this region, but I am in love with this region. So I can't pass my slide. Sorry. I have a problem here. I can't pass the slide.
With the just down.
Now.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to start. So here I would like to start with a picture or a lot of pictures from this region because most of you probably you don't know what's happening here. We have a region in the far, far west, that's true, but it is a region with a lot of history, a lot of heritage. We have heritage from Muslims, from Romans, and we have the most beautiful landscapes you could imagine. So probably if you have some information about our region because of this amazing place for living, but we have more things to share with other regions in Europe. We have in this region the context of our project and our way of spreading the culture of entrepreneurship. It's we have a strong background in corporate social responsibility and sustainability. We have a specific law promoting corporate social responsibility in the region. We are really committed with sustainability. It's not only a question of politicians, it's not only a question of education system, it's not only a question of academy. I'm coming from university, I'm an academic, but it's a mix of different people working on the same area. At university and researching, we demonstrate that corporate social responsibility in our region is impacting performance in small and medium enterprises, and it is improving the competitive success of our companies. We have a big policy under the framework of sustainable development goals. We have specific programs for collective thinking and sharing. It's a way of governance. We have a project that is Repensar, we think about the future of our region, where different stakeholders are invited to participate. Everybody is able to participate in the Extremadura 2030, the big plan for our development in the future. So this is the framework where we are working on entrepreneurship culture. The purpose of my presentation today is just to share what we are doing here as a case study. It's not the best region probably, but we have a very strong project and we are really strong in what we do. We have a very good team that is a cultura emprendedora, that is an entrepreneurship culture. There is a big, amazing team of technicians, and we have a huge support of all educators. We have teachers are really involved in the project, and we have these educational programs to promote entrepreneurship in the region. We have 3 different systems. We have junior for small children, teen for teenagers, and youth and expert. It's for secondary school, vocationally, and classical secondary school. We have these 4 different projects, and we have also starting to promote entrepreneurship culture at university, because the university higher education is involved in this program. So we are there. I always like to show where we are and inviting people to visit us. And here we have our common framework, the Entrecom wheel. But I want to remember for all of you that we have here, it is our common framework, where we have 3 competencies areas, ideas and opportunities, interaction and resources. But we realize that the 15 competencies in these 3 big blocks are of equal importance in our project. And at the same time, I want to remember that this framework is not a compulsory framework. It's flexible, and it was created like a starting point, a point for inspiring regions and inspiring teams in entrepreneurship culture. So again, I can pass, sorry, I have a small problem here on my. Now, it takes time, sorry. So our pillars, we are in this framework, but we are different. Extremadura is a specific ecosystem for culture entrepreneurship, because we have our core values very, very strong in sustainable entrepreneurship. Sustainable entrepreneurship refers to the discovery, creation, and exploration of entrepreneurial opportunities, but contributing to sustainability. And this is on the ADN of our region. Entrepreneurship spirit also is considered here something that is more than creating a company or building or developing a business. We are really aware that other kinds of entrepreneurship exist, like intrapreneurship, if you are working for a company, or entrepreneurship if you are part of an organization or part of a public institution. So for us, entrepreneurship is more than companies, businesses, or fostering new opportunities of startups. We have another important core value, that is competencies are learnable, but they are not teachable. So I think that it's important to share that, because we share the idea that we have to put people into action. Our students are learning by doing. It's not, we have not physical courses And I have to say that our courses in culture, entrepreneurship culture, are really out of the formal system. It's a voluntary project for students and for teachers. Teachers that they are really committed are involved if they want, year by year, and students every year are invited to participate, and it's completely voluntary. This is a good characteristic to say. And even we can say that we are looking for developing these competencies, but we are always really focused on employability, because we know and we realize that we have to promote employability. Well, I joined the team in 2017, but this was not, sorry, oh my God, there. But it was not the point of starting this project. This project has a very long tradition. We are measuring teacher satisfaction. It's not a topic for today. We are teaching, we are also measuring and trying to evaluate student competencies, and it's what I want to share now. And we are also focused on other subjects. For instance, last year, we were working on how students or teachers were reacting to this pandemic time. And now we are involved in social entrepreneurship, and we are starting to evaluate the intention to start a social entrepreneurship adventure in students in the top levels. Anyway, we have different publications, but I want to share with you today, from now, our way of measuring competencies. I'm going to present you the way that we are working on these competencies. We have divided competencies in different blocks. We have personal competencies. We have defined, for instance, motivation, vision, self-confidence, autonomy, or flexibility. This first block, it was coming from addition to measure the impact of culture, entrepreneurship culture in the region. So when we started to measure in a more professional way, we defined these blocks. First one, personal competencies. I'm going to pass, I want to discover something. Process and outcome competencies. I don't want to stop here. I will be back here in 2 minutes. Social responsibility competencies that were also important and included in process and outcome. Intellectual competencies like creativity or problem solving. And social competencies really linked to the work of students with others, teams, leadership, communication, commercial orientation. But what's the link of this system of measuring our competencies here and the impact on our students? Here is the most important part of my presentation is what I want to share. We know that we have not so much time, but I have divided in colors for trying to show with by intuition what we are doing. If you remember our wheel, our intercom wheel, remember that the blue was ideas and opportunities, green interaction, and orange resources. When we have a look to our tool, you can see, because I took the time to the colors, how our system that is divided in classical or traditional blocks are not against our intercom framework. It's the contrary. Our intercom framework was the inspiration to organize the system that we had before. We had different ways of measuring in different courses, in different levels, different students. So 3 years ago, we started working on entrepreneurship culture in this European framework, and we defined the same that we were doing with some changes, but we have in our spirit the essence of our way of measuring with personal competencies. You can see there the different equivalents with our project. You can see here, for instance, as process and outcome competencies are more or less part of them, well, are in the green. So interaction, so process, for instance, differences that we can find if we call it commitment. When you check to the questions that we use it and we develop here, for instance, assume responsibilities or sharing responsibilities when something involves the whole team, it's taking the initiative in our framework. Then we have different elements. We have more competencies because there are a disaggregation of competencies in different items. Even here, social responsibility competencies, they are part of process. You see that this part of ideas on opportunities because of, I put it in blue. So when we follow up intellectual competencies that were really important in our system, there is a share of green, yellow, and orange in our system. We have the same ideas, we are measuring the same competencies that in the framework, but with our own way of measuring in blocks that they are more classical, and they came from the previous studies that we did in the region. Social competencies are more interaction and more related with sources. And the last part of my presentation is just trying to show you that we are not only measuring in a descriptive way, we have incorporated in our system what we call it second generation models of multivariance statistics. This is structural equation modeling. We develop a system or a model where we put into relation, this is a cause effect model. In our framework, personal competencies were for us the most important competencies we developed, because we thought that the impact of these personal competencies in the other competencies will be really strong. And we hypothesize that social responsibility competencies or ethical behavior that we have in our framework were just a cause coming from a previous training or a previous improvement of other competencies. Under the framework of sustainability development goals, we prove that these personal competencies, that I remember that this is a mix of ideas, interaction, but more resources than other competencies in our framework, were responsible for creating like the climax or the good opportunities for students develop the other group of competencies, and trying to create students with a good or a strong ethical understanding of entrepreneurial problems. So this model, that is a complex model that was published just to offer our tool, was the answer to our questions. It was a way of evaluating, having the statistical confirmation that the way that we are following in our region is really a good way, because we are getting improvements and we are getting results, cause effect results, and we can be proud of what we are doing in a voluntary basis with a project with a lot of people involved. And well, that is all that I wanted to share with you. I know that is a lot of information in not too much time, but just ideas. We are using our system of our tool is our own tool. It was developed by all of us, taking into account everything that was done before. but the Entrecom Europe framework is on the basis of our system. Our system is has been statistically proved, and we have this support, and we are really proud of this system. And obviously, that we have to improve, and we can learn from other experiences. But I think that our experience is good to share. And thank you for this invitation and open questions or discussions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for your intervention. I think it was very, very interesting, despite the short time we have. I don't know if you want to ask any question to Isabel, please use the chat. We'll pick them from there. I don't know, Alexandra, if we already have some.
Yes, we do. We just have one coming in. So Isabel, are students and business field recognizing the competencies in your region?
Well, in our region, we have these 4 different levels, and business students, I'm at the university, I'm part of the Faculty of Economics and Science. We are starting to work in these competencies also in a project that is Sapiens. And at the moment, I'm involved in this previous. We are working so hard, trying to develop these competencies in students. We're ready to start studying in economics and business science. It's important to say also that probably, Alexandra, the only 2 or the only one small competence in our framework that we have not really developed so strong is this one of understanding economy. Well, we have students in secondary, we have students in expert, all the students in the expert group are really focused on business and entrepreneurial competencies for creating a business, but it's not really our focus in primary school or other projects. At university, we are starting to join. We are in this interesting moment where we are trying to link what this region has been done during the previous time in primary and secondary and vocational training, and we are starting to develop these courses in the university. At university, we have a lot of offer, but maybe a little bit disseminated. We have different projects, but now we are in the moment to integrate everything in the same project, have the whole picture of our region. Yeah, we are in this, probably next year, we will have the problem solved because every part will be very well integrated, but we are focused on primary, secondary, and vocational training. Thank you.
Well, I have a question myself. So what did you see was the opportunity or the advantage of using Entrecom to underpin your evaluation model?
Well, that's clear that we have an opportunity to compare. Well, I'm really sorry. I'd like to say or to listen that this region or this other region is developed or underdeveloped, or I don't like this kind of because, for instance, our landscapes, our teachers, our educational system is the best of the world. But there are nothing to compare landscapes or quality of teachers. Then we are measured or we are compared by, for instance, GDP and well, I'm an economist, but I'm a social economist and economist of happiness, and I think that GDP is something more than units produced by industry, blah blah blah. So in our case, for this region that I defend this region because we have a very good ecosystem. No one that is not living here will understand that we have a very good framework. We have a very good ecosystem. It's too many times working together, different people. 1 year probably you can be part, or 1 year you can be out, but it's like a machine that is very well linked. So for us, in my opinion, to be under this framework is the perfect opportunity to use the same tools that other people we compare. So our system is our system that is made for us. It's our way of measuring and evaluating competencies. But as I tried to show you, it's very easy. If you want tomorrow, everybody here in this presentation today, if you want tomorrow, we can put on a table. This framework can be perfectly compared with other frameworks using the same entry framework in Europe. So it's a very important tool for trying to compare ourselves with others, not to be the best, but just to show in which things we can improve, and also to show what we are doing very well, because everybody and every region has something to offer or to show. So it's good for comparing, for even empowering teachers, empowering politicians, empowering regions. Know that we are doing things that they are really in the average or even better than others. And I think that is empowering. We have to see the mirror of and to see what others are doing. So I think that welcome for this project. Thank you, all of you, that we are involved in this project. I'm today here just trying to share what is not my merit. I'm just trying to express what the whole region is doing a lot of time ago. I'm just trying to share this information. It's not me, the protagonist.
There is actually another question in the chat, so I'll read it now. I would like to ask about what should our NGOs do in order to promote the aims of Entrecomp, and if you can think of any particular projects.
Yeah, well, we need another seminar. Well, we have all these projects, for instance, junior, teen, expert, well, any program. We have different programs. We have very good links with NGOs. So we can say that they are the perfect partners. For instance, in Teen Emprende, we were working with different NGOs for helping students develop their ideas. They have also the classroom open for sharing with the students their experiences, because I remember for us, it is in our ADN. Entrepreneurship is not only businesses and for-profit organizations. It's not in our ecosystems. We are defending public institutions. We are defending NGO associations. Even we are defending the fourth sector. These hybrid models that we have here in the region, different consortium or different collaborations that they are, well, growing up like mushrooms. Every day we can see that a good coordination between public and private, or NGOs sector and private or and public, different combinations, and everybody is welcome to spread, and the project is open. Everybody who wants to participate.
Is there any other a question? Please feel free to drop them in the chat. Actually, I wanted to ask you something that maybe will be interesting for everyone. Is your tool available elsewhere, or can we ask for it, or how does it work?
Well, I don't know if the presentation that I think that the presentation will be ready for everybody, was open for participants. If you see on the top of the model, you can see the reference of our tool. Our tool was published. It's true that we have these books that I showed. They are here. They are typical books, but they are in Spanish and probably difficult to be shared. But the other document, there you can find our, well, the tool at the end is a simple tool. The questions grouped by blocks, and the tool is there. So we have not a sophisticated tool. We use the questionnaire. It's a self-reported questionnaire. The students answer the questionnaire at the end of the period, and the team, the technicians are responsible for this we can say field work of repeating all these answers. And the tool was it time to develop this tool, but it's available. It's there in this publication that is in our presentation. You can see the presentation, and the tool is there. Is the reference? It's an article that it's open. It's open access, so it's free for everybody, and for sure everybody can contact us for any details or something that to be deep on any circumstances. We can say that our instrument is like an heritage from what it was what we did before here in the region, and then we started to work in this framework, Entrecom framework, and respecting these evaluations and taking into consideration this new framework. We developed this model, this tool that I showed today, but it's there, it's published. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. I think now that it's time to go from Spain to Belgium or to Wales, maybe, better said. And I very welcome Hazel, who takes the floor again, but this time to present the EntroAssess project and other very interesting projects aligned with the Entrecomp and related to education. Thank you, Hazel, for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Annabelle. Thanks. And thanks for inviting me as well. Always happy to enthuse about all things entrepreneurial and learning and assessment. So I'm going to share. Is my PowerPoint working? Is that okay? Can you see it? Great.
We can see it. Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Thank you. So as we've already talked about, we believe, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, that we believe that there are benefits to students in using Entrecomp with them. And these are some of the benefits. So fostering an entrepreneurial skills and mindset is not only about preparing students for the future within the complex economic environment, but also, one second. Okay, one sec, sorry, bear with me. Okay, but it also fosters all this personal and social development so that students have skills to work with other people, they have creativity to solve problems, they can reflect on their strengths, they can identify their interests and dream big. They have to develop aspirations. They have a can-do attitude to turn ideas into action, as Isabel was telling us earlier, and be resilient to handle setbacks, applying financial literacy and numeracy skills in the real world, communicating wide-ranging ideas to different audiences in different places, and contributing to the community as active, responsible citizens. Now that's a tall order, and we can't evidence all those benefits and all that capacity and capability only through one assessment method or only using traditional approaches. We need to develop and use more creative and innovative approaches and types of evidence if we are going to be able to capture and report these benefits in ways that are tangible and recognizable. So then we developed and have been piloting an innovative online course for educators called Entrecomp Edu. So the vision for this training is for a world in which every learner has the entrepreneurial skills to be part of a workforce that is alert and awake and responsive to change, capable of designing and implementing new solutions to complex problems. So this teacher training program then is to prepare teachers or upskill teachers to be able to prepare learners for life in a complex world. So we want to empower teachers to rethink the skills they have and how they can be used by seeing their own strengths and entrepreneurial competence and use them to improve the quality and inclusivity of school education. We want to build bridges from the classroom to the real world of ongoing learning and work, making direct links to local policy and local practices. But again, I'll make the point, we need to be able to evidence how this course adds value to educators, to be able to describe to teachers in different places, working for different purposes, what the benefits to them will be of developing their own entrepreneurial competence and developing entrepreneurial competences of their learners. So there are 5 competence areas in the course which educators will recognise. Pretty standard fare, I think, for professional learning. What's specific about this course, of course, is that everything is through the lens of entrepreneurial learning. So the first unit, the knowledge and understanding, is focused very much around entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial learning. So in terms of the professional knowledge and understanding, we pose questions to engage the teachers. What do I need to know about entrepreneurial learning? How does the entrepreneurial learning relate to my subject? And what will it mean to my students? How will it add value to my students? So that's what the first area is about. Planning and organisation supports educators to create a stimulating and purposeful entrepreneurial learning environment. Teaching and training then looks at how teachers can motivate and inspire students through entrepreneurial learning. And the one we're most interested in today, assessment, how teachers can support and challenge students so they make good progress in their entrepreneurial learning, but also, most importantly for today, how teachers and learners can use wide-ranging evidence to be able to validate and report the impact of their activity in learning. And then finally, the final core competence area is the professional learning and development, asking teachers how they can improve their practice in entrepreneurial education. And we do this through 6 principles of entrepreneurial learning. So these are recognizable and are sort of taking the Entrecomp playbook principles, of which there are 9, I think. These are applied specifically to the teaching, educating, training context. So creativity then, entrepreneurial learning needs to include creative thinking throughout the learning process. As I've mentioned, we want to foster links between the classroom and the real world. Active entrepreneurial learning through real world contexts to address real world purposes. Promoting collaboration, fostering purposeful collaboration both in and beyond school. So not just collaborative learning between learners and teachers, but involving actors from the local community in that collaboration, local employers, local charities, parents, relevant external stakeholders can add significant values and can provide really interesting experiences and perspectives to enrich learning. Value creation, encouraging students to create value for others and themselves, of course, through their learning. This is very powerful and empowering, particularly for those learners who are disengaged or who lack confidence. This idea of being able to actually impact on the real world is phenomenally empowering, exciting, engaging, inspiring, I would argue. So reflection then, stimulating reflection, flexible thinking and learning from experience with an eye on always looking to continually improve. There's always a better way to do everything that we do. So keeping an eye on learning to continuously improve our practice. And then finally, the visibility, making these entrepreneurial competences an explicit part of learning and assessment. How can we make that competence visible? In the same way that we started today's session saying, asking the question, what does a useful session look like? What do these competencies look like when they're adding value to learning and practice? So that's what the visibility principle is about. So the structure of the course, then, it has these dimensions. There's the framework, the educator competence framework for delivering EntreComp. There's a self-assessment tool, which we'll have a look at in more detail. Teacher training, so there's the online facilitated course available, and a map of practical examples. The principles and methods in action, if you like. So in module 4, we developed a survey which participants could use as a self-assessment diagnostic tool, if you like. So the EntreAssess tool encourages and supports educators to reflect on the what, where, when, who, and why of their assessment approaches, really unpicking assessment practice to clarify the purpose and the impact of what we're doing with assessment. And then within the tool, there are also learning and assessment tips, as well as ideas and suggestions on how to move assessment online. So the interesting feature of the survey format for us and for assessment purposes, we developed the tool in a survey tool called Survey Anyplace, which once you complete the survey will give you a downloadable PDF report. So that gave us the opportunity to provide personalized, bespoke, tailored advice around next steps, almost like a personal action plan for developing us and improving assessment literacy practice. So yeah, one sec. So completing the self-assessment promotes reflection and evaluation and helps us educators to think about what we're doing already and what we need to do next to improve. And the report analyzes the responses that participants give to particular questions, structured around those key questions. And then the answers generate these next step tips around what next steps practice could be, what assessment might look like in different teaching settings for different purposes, how to assess online, how the assessment process itself can add value to teaching and, more importantly, learning. You know, how we can use assessment processes to further our learning objectives. But what the tool also does is create a shared approach, a shared structure, a shared language, if you like, to develop assessment literacy and to drive those standards further. And I suppose here we have similar goals to Isabel's work in terms of coming together to share where we are, to push ourselves and each other further in that quality improvement journey. Okay, so teachers can discuss their findings with other colleagues across phases then with this common language and approach. And the most effective teaching, learning and assessment often happens when teachers and teaching teams discuss, plan and work together. So this is an example of one of the questions. So this question relates specifically to the what are you assessing? So it tends to scope what we're trying to promote through asking these questions. The answers differentiate according to the breadth of use and the depth of use. So for example, in this one, what competencies are you assessing? So the responses would be like, oh no, sorry, this one's about familiarity. That's right. Yeah, I sort of know what they are-ish, or I'm definitely using one in my practice. I use combinations of 2 and 3 fluidly in my practice. So you can see differentiators here in the question responses, and an educator would need to pick where they feel they are. Do they use one? Do they mix and blend them? Have they just got a vague idea and a general goal? So this helps to break down and differentiate practice. And then having gone through these different questions, they are provided then with a report. So this is the response. This is an example of the report responding to the question I just showed you in the previous slide. So it'll tell you what your level is and what your next steps are. It gives some ideas for learning activities, ideas for assessment activities, ideas and ways in which you can undertake that learning and assessment online, but also the benefits. What learners, why bother trying this approach? Because it will achieve the following impacts. So that's the individual report. And our next steps in terms are that we want to develop the tool further, because it was an idea that had come to us. We pulled the tool together very quickly, and we were able to use it in phase 2 of the Entrecomp Edu pilot. But we're conscious that it needs a lot of development, a lot of improvement, and we're excited about the tool's potential use to develop assessment literacy for educators, to sort of move that practice along. And we're currently analysing Entrecomp Edu participant feedback to see in which ways participants believe it needs to improve, what we can do to make it better. We're looking to significantly develop the Take It Online section, the online assessment section. So, and chiming with today's purposes and our focus for today's session, looking at a range of evidence examples and types and how to use them for assessment as learning, really. How can we adopt better learning, teaching methods that generate evidence we can use for assessment, but that ability to make judgments based on wide-ranging and diverse evidence. Okay, so are there any questions?
So feel free to drop your question in the chat, or even ask to just take the floor and unmute yourself. So I'll kick off then. I was curious, can anyone access the the Entreassess tool without going through the Entrecomp Edu course?
Yes, you can, because it's available as a standalone tool, because it was created in Survey Anyplace. You can just log into Survey Anyplace and try it there. And people are welcome to try it. But I suppose the price I would ask is that you give us feedback on how we can make it better. If you do want to use it, drop us a line and tell us what you thought and how you feel we could improve it. So yes, you can. And over time, shortly, once we have our platform, we'll be able to make it available, more easily available, more readily available to practitioners there.
Right, because at the moment, how would someone do it to access it? What would they have to do?
I've got a link. One sec, I'll share the link with the, one sec, give me a second. Copy link, okay. I'll put it in the chat here. But yes, we'd be very interested in and we've got different language versions as well. So I think this is the link to the English version. So if anybody wanted a version in a different language, if they can pop it in the chat, and we can make sure that we can provide the correct links after the session.
All right, and so Entrecomp Edu, the course ran one time. Is it going to run again?
Yes, we've undertaken 2 phases of the pilot, and then we'll be looking to do another facilitated course either at the end of this year or certainly by the beginning of next year.
Great. There is a question from Raquel in the chat. Is the Entreassess targeted as teachers or students? Could you remind ourselves?
Teachers in the first instance, but I would also argue that it's aimed at students in the sense that the competencies developed and promoted through the Entreassess tool include developing the assessment literacy of students. So it encourages teachers to enable and empower their learners with increased opportunities to behave as assessors. So to take the role of assessors and examiners, so developing student assessment literacy. But yes, the primary target group is teachers.
All right, and Ellen is telling us, so the Entre Assess is available in Finnish, Macedonian, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and Welsh. So quite a lot. Yeah, so if anyone has any question, please feel free to take the floor or drop them into the chat. We're monitoring them right now. Sandra is saying, we are also developing online learning assessment and endorsement for Entrecomp. So, and she's shared the link in the chat. Thank you so much, Sandra, for this. You can all access it in the chat.
And I think, sorry, I have some problems with my connection, so I may overlap with other people when speaking. I don't know if you were saying something, Hazel.
Just thank you very much, Brill, for the link. The Cities of Learning, definitely interested in keeping in touch about that. Definitely, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hazel, for the presentation. I think that, well, the chat remains open if you wish to ask some more question. I think it is time for us to go to the, again, to the quick dynamics or activity we had on assessment. So Hazel, I give you the floor again, but that time to come back to our mural and guide us on the next steps.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then, well, we've done the, we've been through the two presentations and we've done the question Q&A. So we're going to look now, we're going to focus at the center column, the impact column. So what I did was I took your suggested success criteria and created a list. You'll see the blue list there to sort of synthesize them a bit, to make them a little bit snappier and easier for us to use. So what I would ask you to do now is against each of those success criteria to give us a score for the session between 1 and 5, 5 being the best, 1 being not very good. And of course it's anonymous, so you know, fill your boots, please give us some genuine feedback. But so yes, if you can add post-it notes with scores against the criteria that matter to you, please. I mean, we'd be interested in scores against them all, or just the ones that you're most interested in. So we've got, we wanted the session to be a useful session, then has to be engaging and inspiring. You need to learn new information. You want practical and applied examples. And you wanted to learn more about how to assess online, how to evidence impact, you wanted to network with like-minded people, and you wanted to see how people use Entrecomp examples. Those are the criteria we've got. Okay, so if you put your scores against those, then thank you, Brill. I never get tired of watching the activity. I think it's like a beehive or ant. It is so busy. It's great. Great.
It will be difficult to have an average note,
Yes.
but we will try to have one afterwards.
This is great. Yes, thank you for the scores, because this will help us.
Yes.
And we were thinking as well that we should probably adopt these criteria to evaluate the impact and value of sessions going forward as well. But certainly identifying success criteria with learners or participants in advance is the best way of establishing clear and shared expectations of an activity. I mean, we as putting on this session for you now today. We have our ideas of what we think it should be, but you will all obviously come with yours, which may and are often different. So it's really, really valuable to spend time sharing and clarifying shared expectations in this way, particularly for assessment, particularly for high stakes assessment. Great. Okay. Now this is the critical bit, which is the third column. Okay, right. So you've made these judgments, you've awarded these scores, and that's great. So whatever, if someone said to you, okay, thank you very much for that feedback, now I want you to prove it. So if you say this session was useful, for example, Annabelle, Isabel, Alex, myself, if we said, yeah, this session was really useful. and then if somebody said to us, what do you mean useful? We would say, well, we mean engaging and inspiring, learning new information, you know, how to assess, and we would list our criteria, and then we've got the judgment scores. But the critical bit is being able to evidence that, being able to prove it, being able to support and validate those judgments with evidence. So I wanted us to spend a little bit of time today thinking about what evidence is available to us to support those judgments. So if I had to prove to somebody why I thought this was a useful session or an okay session, what evidence is available to me? So that's the next thing then. I would really like your suggestions as to think about the whole experience of the session here today online. What evidence have we generated, or could we generate, or should we generate, that would help to support the judgments and the scores awarded today? It's all about impact. What will have been the impact of today's session, and how do we know?
In the meantime, I don't know, we have a question from Sandra in the chat. I don't know who wants to answer, maybe Hazel. I can read it for you. In non-formal education, we are often struggling with assessing specific skills in a way that formal education and business field will see it as valid. Are there experiences outside formal education, or do you see ways of how to do this? Entrepreneurial gives competencies, but when has someone achieved a specific skill?
I think the best way, I think it's because there are so many competencies, you'd have to be able to evidence the richness and diversity of Entrepreneurial competencies. I think you need to use more than one method. That would be my first piece of advice. But a portfolio seems the obvious way to build an evidence and validate Entrepreneurial competence in non-formal settings. You know, when you think about an art student applying to an art college, they take a portfolio of their work with them. So they're able to discuss their interests and their competence linked to very concrete pieces of evidence. And I think a similar approach is probably has many benefits in a non-formal setting, because if the focus is on generating evidence, like a CV, a digital CV, or a website to showcase work done, skills learned, projects taken part in, and these can be very wide-ranging pieces of evidence, from family life, from work settings, from volunteering, from doing stuff, you know, a wide range of evidence captured using a wide range of media, you know, photographs, videos, feedback forms from people's certificates. And if you've got lots of different types of evidence within a portfolio that a learner owns and can manage, that learner can use that evidence for wide-ranging purposes and can take that evidence to a more formal setting, or maybe if they want to gain a qualification or some certification, that the evidence is there. They just need to describe their experience, their competence using this evidence, and anybody can make an award on the basis of that. Oh, that in fact, that's what awarding bodies do. And that sounds very much like a viva of a PhD. You know, you've done your piece of work, you present your piece of work and people ask you questions about it. So I would encourage learners, particularly in a non-formal setting, to start building pieces of evidence to describe their achievements, their experiences, their competence in very informal and creative ways to begin with, because ultimately those pieces of evidence are the things that will translate across contexts. If that helps. Does that answer the question? I hope so.
Thank you, Hazel.
Okay. Let's have a look. How are we getting on with the evidence?
Yes, and if you want, just yeah, pick
Great.
some evidence notes.
So usually, you see, normally when you're undertaking, for example, now, if we were undertaking this session as a part of a project and we needed to evidence certain aspects of this, this session, we've got a list of registrations, we've got the recorded video, we've got screenshots showing who was here, what they were doing, we've got the PowerPoint presentations, we've got the chat in the Q&A, downloads of the recording, questions asked, yes, webinar interactions between. So we've got a really rich base of evidence here. And normally when people evaluate these sessions, they only look at the evaluation forms. But the point I wanted to emphasize was that we have a much wider range of richer evidence that we could do a much more detailed, in-depth analysis of to help us with our evaluation. And it's these principles, it's these ideas that suit EntreComp competence assessment very well, I think. Looking beyond, looking outside the box, isn't it? Being creative about how we use wide-ranging evidence. So
okay, so I think that we can close that that part. Thank you for your contributions. I think Ellen is there. I cannot see you right now, but I am yes. Here. Okay, so the floor is yours for the conclusions and next steps of the project.
Thank you everybody. Now, I think the next steps from this particular session today are many and varied in a way. But what I would like to add is that one thing you may have spotted in the mural is that we added a part in the mural. If you scroll, if those of you that are still in the mural, which many of you are, you can scroll over and there's a what next box that we have there. So I think if I can summon you. Never quite know how to summon everybody. Summon. No. But if you come over to the right-hand side, okay, any problem seeing it, you can go down to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and zoom out. And so you make the whole vision in mural smaller. And you can see there, what next? Because obviously Sandra has shared her work that she's doing in the Netherlands. And I know that the Green for Future project has also shared what they're doing and the link to their work. We're interested to gather through these sessions here. We obviously want to create a peer exchange. And this is our first sort of peer exchange on the theme of assessment and digitalization. There will be more coming up. But through this, we also want to gather insights onto what you're doing and also gather feedback onto what we've done, what we've shared. So what next? Okay, what next? Come to the mural and tell us, what questions do you have, perhaps after this session, or that have not been answered, that you need answers to? Pop the question in there. What ways do you see that could improve these online sessions that we're holding here? Because if you've given a score, you could, there was a reason behind that. If you've got ideas that we can use to take this forward and think about this more, please add them here. Go for your life. We need the feedback. Ideas that you'd like to explore around assessment. What are your burning issues on this topic? or perhaps things around this. Assessment is one of those things that touches everything. Assessment literacy for students, assessment as learning, through learning, as learning being the whole process of understanding your learning process, is that understanding your own development as a teacher, as a student, as a whole school or educational organization, as an ecosystem around assessment. How we value our learning is often how we judge it. And perhaps these skills that we talk about today are not valued within your education system. Is this something that you want to explore? Practices, projects that you're involved in that you'd like to share, that you think others might be interested in, that you've heard of from others, please. This is the kind of the last 8 minutes, people, to get these down on this mural. And as I say, we're really keen to find out, because this is one element of the EntreComp Europe project. And EntreComp Europe is all about trying to support countries and stakeholders within those countries to really develop your understanding, your insight, practices, and also confidence in using the EntreComp competencies, entrepreneurial learning, to develop across youth work, education, employability pathways, and also working towards developing projects, developing ideas into action, be that as a community action, be that as a cooperative, be that as within wider social economy, be that as your own startup. So this project is part of really an ecosystem of learning, a learning community that we want to create, bringing people together. So we are not individuals working on this topic, but we're a community trying to learn from each other. We're just kind of hoping to start this. We've got a lot of interest, and we need to make sure we keep you interested, because in order for us to learn from you, we need you to be there to learn from, and hopefully we can share all of our practices as well. So we've got EntreComp Europe as those 5 countries within this project. There's also many projects that you are also involved in that link to EntreComp, that have learning to share. So this is where we want to sort of, when we look at next steps, from this, we want to spot case studies. We want to spot the ideas for our next webinars. We want to spot the cracking ideas that there are out there about assessment of these competencies for students, for teachers, for the ecosystem. We want to try and solve that challenge of how do we support education systems to recognize and value these sometimes hard to reach, hard to see competencies within formal education systems, within non-formal learning, something Sandra highlighted earlier. We want to see how we can relate these competencies using assessment as well, using that process of recognizing value created in different lenses: citizenship, green transformation, social change, activism, really trying to open up our lens of how we see this. And then, of course, to bring people together into a community. And if you go to entrecomp.com, you can pre-register for the online community that we are developing, that will bring together, hopefully, many projects that are working on entrepreneurial learning, many organizations and practitioners, to join a learning community where we can effectively share, network, learn, and learn formally, learn informally. But to bring people together. And in there, you will find EntreComp Belgique, EntreComp Turkey, EntreComp Moldova. Perhaps you want an EntreComp Czech Republic or an EntreComp Belarus. Who knows? This is something that, we would like to support. And it's building this community that's the next steps, and looking at the stepping stones towards helping all of us develop excellence, develop our knowledge and learning towards just making our work better. And that's small steps, big steps. But I think my lifelong belief is that we're better together. And so this is why we've developed these projects, and this is why we really want to hopefully get loads of stuff on this mural, so that we can take it away, have a look, and come back to you with some new opportunities, new ideas, and new ways that you could contribute. But in the meantime, please do go to entrecomp.com, pre-register for that online learning community. It will be launched in early May, and we'll keep you informed on that process as well. I don't know if anyone's got any last questions or anything that we would like to highlight at this point. Anything I've forgotten to my colleagues as well, of upcoming dates that we should highlight. But yeah, hopefully we can try and get as much as we can down on this What Next mural. We love murals, we do. And come back together in events that we shape to suit you in the future, and hopefully supported by that entrecomp.com learning community, which will bring all of us together.
I think everything has been said, shared. So hopefully we will meet again quite soon. Stay tuned. That is my recommendation, because there are so many things happening in Entrepreneurial Europe that, yes, almost every week or every 2 weeks, there is a very interesting open space that you can join that are very targeted. This one was on assessment and education, but there will be more coming soon. So yeah, definitely, I would like to thank you all for joining today. Thank you to the team of Entrepreneurial Europe for all the support and also, the good work done. And see you very soon. So goodbye. Thank you very much.